this morning. More than half of the local authorities in England don't have clear plans in place for housing older people. Research by Knight Frank describes a crisis in planning policy which needs to be sorted. Our reporter Sam Fennick's been looking into it for us. Sam, why is it a crisis, a problem?
Well, at the moment, Winifred, it's because we have an ageing population. So in the next 20 years, nearly 1 in 7 people in the UK is projected to be over the age of 75. But at the current build rates, there won't be enough suitable housing for them. People are already finding that. So Jan Dyer got in contact with us. She's 76. She wants to move on from a 19th century stone cottage in Malvern that's become a bit too big for her, and she says it's really drafty. But what she wants next, she says, isn't on offer.
Well, the only retirement properties available in this town, sort of a form of sheltered accommodation where there's a live-in manager. They are flats, they are usually well insulated and very well maintained, and all responsibilities of day-to-day living are removed because the gardens are maintained, the properties are well looked after. But I also find them quite isolationist, and not everyone is friendly. I know people who live in one locally, and she's very, very lonely because the people just stay in their flats.
We've got some research which suggests that half of local authorities in England don't have clear policies in place to support housing for seniors. Do you agree with that? Can you see that in the housing stock that you might be interested in moving into?
Oh, yes, very much so. There's only the choice of living as a family or a married couple in your own home, or then as you age moving into some sort of sheltered accommodation, especially if you want to downsize an expensive home or a large home that you no longer feel is suitable for you.
But the kind of sheltered accommodation that we have at the moment does not fit your needs because you think that it takes away your independence.
Yes, I think it does to a certain extent. I find it quite a controlling environment, and it certainly doesn't answer my own mental and physical needs at the moment.
And it's stories like Jan's which led researchers at Knight Frank to investigate council planning policies when it comes to older living. And they found that out of the 322 local authorities in England, 60 have clear plans in place and specific sites allocated for housing for older people, while 161, that's half of them, don't have any plans at all. Here's Lauren Harwood. She's the head of senior living at Knight Frank, and she did that research.
There is a substantial imbalance between the rate that our population is ageing and the delivery of suitable housing for seniors. And just to put it into context, in England in the last 5 years, there's been 177,000 more individuals aged 65 plus, and that's compared to only 8,500 units being delivered. So kind of looking at the math there is a substantial imbalance, and we do need to address this.
Are there particular places that are doing quite well and others that aren't doing so well?
The analysis that we conducted showed that quite a lot of cities are underperforming. In our kind of ranking process, the reason they kind of perform quite poorly is just the huge population growth that's expected in these areas. So Birmingham, as an example, has the largest population of seniors over 65s out of any local authority, almost 150,000 people. But there are no kind of distinct senior kind of housing policies in place or allocation of land. And in addition to that, somewhere like London is also a really clear example. Obviously, we know population projections in London are going to be huge over the next 10, 20 years. But out of the 28 London boroughs, 22 of them we'd ranked as D, which was the lowest ranking for planning policy. And this just further highlighted the lack of kind of clear policy and allocation of sites for seniors housing.
Lauren Harwood from Knight Frank. So what proportion of older people in the UK are living then in what she describes there as seniors housing?
Well, at the moment in the UK, half of 1% of over 65-year-olds currently live in retirement homes, purpose-built homes. That figure is 5% in countries like the United States, New Zealand and Australia. We heard from people like Jan just before, didn't we? They're looking for something different, and developers know that. They want to build all sorts of different kinds of homes for older people, and big pension funds are also looking to invest in them, but they say the lack of any planning policy is really holding things up. Legal & General is the biggest pension fund investor in the UK and one of the largest developers. They invest millions of pounds every year and retirement communities are one of their top priorities. Phil Bayliss, the CEO of Later Living at L&G, says it's impossible to get them built because councils are prioritising the need for affordable homes for younger people. He says that they're ignoring the needs of older people.
What we're seeing in planning process is half the local authorities don't have a plan in place, and those that do, the plan does not prioritise housing for older people. And so what that means on the ground when we're going through a planning application, the majority of local authorities are often looking to object. And for us to be able to then get a development approved, it's extra difficult, it's extra time consuming. And as things take longer, development becomes more expensive. And the reality is if we're getting very few planning consents, the supply and demand means these properties are higher and mostly supplied for the upper end of the market. And that's one of the complaints from planning policy is that there needs to be more for everyone. But to do that, we need more help in getting planning permissions and develop for the future. We need housing for older people across the UK. And that's the bit that's getting ignored.
That's Phil Bayliss from Legal & General. So what do the council say?
Well, I've spoken to the Local Government Association. They've told me that councils are committed to ensuring older people live in high-quality, suitable homes and do not necessarily need specific planning policies in place to deal with this. They also say that they'd like the government to work with councils, developers and housing associations to provide a range of housing which caters for everyone. I've spoken to the government as well. They've sent me a statement which says that they have strengthened planning policy and made it clear to councils that they are expected to address the housing needs of older people, and guidance has been published to help them implement that.
Sam Fennick, thank you.